At 2:15 on June 4, 1945, Commander Earl Hydeman stood inside the conning tower of USS Sea Dog, his eyes fixed on the dim green glow of the sonar display. Outside the pressure hull, the black water of the Tsushima Strait waited, narrow, shallow, and lethal. Ahead lay 4 parallel minefields guarding the entrance to the Sea of Japan, a barrier no American submarine had dared to challenge in nearly 2 years. Hydeman was 34 years old. He had completed 3 war patrols, and he knew the numbers. No submarine had ever survived entering Japan's most heavily defended waters. The Japanese had sown nearly 400 naval mines across a 40-mile stretch, each suspended by cables, spaced barely 50 yards apart. American boats stayed away. Everyone did. Everyone except him. The last man who had tried was Lieutenant Commander Dudley "Mush" Morton, the most aggressive submarine skipper the Pacific Fleet had ever produced. Morton's boat, USS Wahoo, had slipped into the Sea of Japan in August 1943 and wreaked havoc for 2 full weeks. 19 enemy ships destroyed in 5 patrols, a legend made steel and seawater. But on October 11, 1943, as Wahoo attempted to escape through La Perouse Strait, Japanese aircraft found her on the surface. 40 bombs followed, then 69 depth charges. 79 men were lost. No survivors. Vice Admiral Charles Lockwood, commander of the U.S. Submarine Force in the Pacific and Morton's closest friend, wrote that night, "This is the worst blow we have suffered. I am heartsick. God will punish the Japanese." For 20 months after Wahoo's destruction, the Sea of Japan became a forbidden zone, Japan's private lake, untouched and uncontested. Merchant ships ran with navigation lights on, sailing predictable courses between Korea and the home islands. They traveled unescorted, unafraid, because everyone knew the minefields made American submarines irrelevant here. The Japanese even had a nickname for it, Hirohito's bathtub. But Lockwood never forgot Dudley Morton, and he never stopped planning how to go back. By early 1945, a breakthrough emerged from the University of California's Division of War Research, a radical new technology known as frequency-modulated sonar, or FM sonar. Unlike conventional systems, it could detect solid objects in the water ahead, displaying them as glowing shapes on a screen and emitting a distinct audible tone when the beam struck metal. The crews who trained with it called the sound Hell's Bells. The system was experimental, unstable. A Navy evaluation in February 1945 concluded bluntly, "It is not felt that FM sonar, in its present state of development, is operationally reliable." Lockwood ignored the warning. Instead, he selected 9 submarines, equipped them with FM sonar, drilled their crews relentlessly for 3 months, and summoned their commanders to Guam on May 27, 1945. There, he issued orders no one had expected to hear. They would break through the Tsushima Strait. They would enter the Sea of Japan, and they would hunt everything that moved. The mission was given a simple name, Operation Barney. The force would move in 3 coordinated wolf packs. Hydeman commanded the lead group, the Hellcats, from Sea Dog, accompanied by Crevalle and Spadefish. Behind them came Pierce's Polecats, Tunny, Skate, and Bonefish. The rear element, Risser's Bobcats, consisted of Flying Fish, Bowfin, and Tautok. The plan left no margin for error. Each submarine would submerge to 150 feet, slow to a crawl, and spend 20 continuous hours underwater, threading its way through 4 dense lines of mines. Surfacing was not an option. Detection meant death. The crews would trust the FM sonar to see what human eyes never could. Shortly after 2:30, Sea Dog passed through 150 feet and leveled off. Hydeman gave the order. The FM sonar was energized. The operator increased the volume until the sound filled every compartment of the boat. For several seconds, there was nothing, only the faint whine of electric motors and the creak of the hull. Then the sonar beam struck something metallic 600 feet ahead. A clear, piercing tone rang through the submarine. Hell's Bells. The first mine. Hydeman glanced at his chart. 3 more mine lines still lay ahead. Hundreds of steel spheres hung silently in the dark, waiting. And as he studied the screen, his stomach tightened. The return image wasn't right. Instead of sharp, defined shapes, the display showed vague, smeared shadows. Uncertain echoes where clarity should have been. The experimental sonar was degrading. At the worst possible moment, Hydeman stared at the glowing green haze, fully aware of what failure meant here. The Sea of Japan lay just beyond reach. Dudley Morton's ghost waited on the far side, and Sea Dog was already inside the minefield. The FM sonar was supposed to paint the minefield in certainty, bright green pairs, clean and unmistakable. Instead, Commander Hydeman saw only blurred shapes, indistinct shadows drifting across the screen. The tone that should have cut through the boat with a sharp, ringing clarity sounded wrong, muddy, warped, as if the ocean itself were interfering. Lieutenant Commander James Lynch, Sea Dog's executive officer, stepped closer to the display, his jaw tightening. "Sir," he said quietly, "the sonar isn't reading correctly." Hydeman didn't look away. "I know. There was a way out. They could surface briefly, raise the radio mast, signal Guam, abort the mission before it truly began. No one would question the decision. The technology was experimental. The risk was absolute." Hydeman glanced down at the chart. June 4th, exactly 20 months since Wahoo had vanished with Dudley Morton and 79 men. He thought of Lockwood's diary, of a sea that had remained untouched ever since. "No," Hydeman said at last. "We're going through." He ordered Sea Dog ahead at 2 knots, barely faster than a man could walk. The indistinct sonar return grew larger, 600 feet, 500, 400. The tone thickened but never sharpened. At 300 feet, the mine should have been directly ahead. Hydeman couldn't see it clearly enough to be sure. Hard right rudder. The submarine began to turn. On the screen, the shapeless blur slid slowly to the left. They had missed it, by yards, maybe less. One by one, Crevalle and Spadefish followed Sea Dog through the first mine line. All 3 Hellcats emerged intact. At 4 o'clock, Hydeman raised the periscope for 30 seconds, just long enough to confirm position, then took the boat back down to 150 feet. 3 minefields still lay ahead. 24 hours later, on June 5th, the second Wolfpack approached the strait. Commander Richard Lynch stood in the conning tower of USS Skate, listening to his sonar operator call out distances in a calm, measured voice. Unlike Sea Dog, Skate's FM sonar performed flawlessly. Every mine appeared as a sharp green echo. Every detection triggered a clean, bell-like tone that echoed through the hull. Hell's bells, clear and undeniable. At 3:20, Skate submerged and entered the first minefield. Within the hour, they reached the second line. Lynch checked his chart and frowned. The spacing here was tighter, 50 yards apart. Skate herself was nearly 100 yards long. The current began pushing them east, directly toward a cluster of 3 mines. "Stop the motors," Lynch ordered. "Let her drift." The sonar showed everything with cruel precision. 40 yards. 30. 20. They were going to hit. Then the sound came. A faint metallic scraping outside the hull, beginning near the bow and sliding aft. A mine cable. If the cable snagged on the bow planes or superstructure, the mine would ride it straight down to the pressure hull. The explosion would be instantaneous. No one would feel anything. Lynch didn't move. No one did. The scraping past the conning tower, slid along the engine room, crept toward the stern. Someone whispered, "This is it." The hydrophone operator increased the volume so everyone could hear. The sound reached the stern planes, touched the propellers. Then, nothing. The cable slipped free. Skate drifted clear. For 30 seconds, Lynch said nothing. When he finally ordered the motors ahead again, his voice was steady. His hands were not. 6 hours later, on June 6th, the final Wolfpack entered the strait. Commander Alexander Thierry guided USS Bowfin into the minefields with FM sonar functioning. But now the sound never stopped. The bell rang every few hundred feet, sometimes one mine every 300 feet, until the ringing filled the submarine completely. For 17 hours, Hell's bells echoed through the boat. Some crewmen stuffed cotton into their ears. Others simply stopped noticing it, the sound fading into the background like tinnitus, like the constant whisper of death waiting just outside the hull. At one point, Bowfin's crew heard the same scraping sound Skate had endured. A cable running the length of the submarine. Bow to stern. Then silence. If the Japanese discovered American submarines inside the Sea of Japan before June 24th, every boat in the Hellcats would be trapped. The exits would be sealed, the minefields reinforced, the straits patrolled relentlessly. There would be no escape. At sunset on June 9, 1945, Admiral Lockwood's standing order became active. Commence firing. Commander Heidemann positioned USS Sea Dog off the northwest coast of Honshu, near the port of Niigata. The scene unfolding through the periscope matched intelligence reports perfectly. Japanese merchant ships moved in steady, predictable streams between Korea and Japan. No escorts, no zigzagging, navigation lights blazing openly against the darkening sea. It was traffic behavior that spoke of absolute confidence. The Japanese believed the Sea of Japan was untouchable. At 2015, Sea Dog's radar picked up a medium freighter, 2,500 tons, course 205 degrees, speed 8 knots, bound for Kyoto. No evasive maneuvers. No hint of danger. Heidemann closed to 1,200 yards and ordered a single torpedo fired. The Mark 18 electric torpedo slipped from the tube without a wake, without exhaust, invisible in the water. At 20:15 and 45 seconds, it struck the freighter forward. The ship sank in 60 seconds. By midnight, Sea Dog had destroyed 2 more vessels, Sagawa Maru, 1,186 tons, and Shoyo Maru, 2,211 tons. Both were hit cleanly. Both vanished beneath the surface within minutes. Across the Sea of Japan, the other Hellcats began their own hunts. Spadefish prowled the waters northeast of Sado Island. Crevalle worked the lanes between Vladivostok and Suruga. Tunny and Skate moved south toward Toyama Bay. Flying fish, bowfin, and tautog stalked the Korean coast. Between June 9th and June 20th, ships disappeared faster than Japanese Naval Command could comprehend. Reports flooded in from different regions at once. Vessels gone without distress calls. No survivors, no explanations. Shipping lanes that had bustled for years suddenly became empty stretches of water. On June 11th, Sea Dog found another freighter, Kafuku Maru, 753 tons. Heidemann fired from 800 yards. The hit was perfect. The ship was gone in 3 minutes. The following morning, June 12th, dawn revealed 2 cargo ships traveling together, Shinsen Maru, 887 tons, and Kaiwa Maru, 1,045 tons, both carrying supplies to northern Honshu garrisons. Heidemann fired 4 torpedoes, 2 at each target. All 4 struck. Both ships sank before 7 o'clock. Only then did Japanese command grasp the truth. American submarines had penetrated the minefields. The Sea of Japan, long considered a protected lake, was compromised. Orders went out immediately. All merchant traffic was to halt. Convoys were recalled. Cargo ships were ordered to anchor in port indefinitely. But the damage was already done. By June 15th, when Sea Dog sank Kwan Maru off Akita, the psychological shock had rippled through Japan's entire merchant fleet. Sailors refused to sail. Captains resigned. Dockworkers walked off the job. Confidence in the last safe shipping route collapsed almost overnight. On June 19th, Sea Dog hunted near the northwest coast of Hokkaido, detecting 2 vessels attempting to slip through under cover of fog. Kokai Maru, an Army cargo ship of 1,272 tons, and Shinhi Maru No. 3, 958 tons. Heidemann tracked them on radar, closed to 300 yards, and fired. Both were sunk before noon. 6 ships, the highest total of any Hellcat. In just 11 days inside the Sea of Japan, Heidemann had destroyed more tonnage than many submarines managed over entire war patrols. Then, something went wrong. Commander Lawrence Edge, commanding USS Bonefish, one of Pierce's polecats, sent his final radio message at 1400 hours from Toyama Bay, reporting an attack on a small convoy. Then silence. Bonefish never transmitted again. She never reached the rendezvous point. She simply vanished. On June 23rd, the 8 surviving Hellcats surfaced at their predetermined coordinates in the northern Sea of Japan to prepare for escape. Heidemann waited past midnight. Bonefish did not appear. The Japanese had finally taken one. Now only 8 submarines remained. Ahead of them lay La Perouse Strait, the same narrow, treacherous passage where USS Wahoo had died, where Dudley, Mush, Morton, and 79 men had vanished beneath bombs and depth charges. This time, the danger was even greater. The Japanese knew. They knew submarines were inside the Sea of Japan. They knew La Perouse was the only northern exit. and they would be waiting. Commander Earl Hydeman made a decision that would either save every remaining boat or destroy them all. Instead of creeping submerged through the strait, following doctrine and crawling past patrols and mines, he ordered something unthinkable: a full-speed surface run, 21 knots, straight through Japanese patrol waters. In darkness, it was madness. On the surface, submarines were exposed. Radar could detect them, aircraft could find them, patrol boats could intercept them. But Hydeman understood something deeper than doctrine. His crews were exhausted. 20 days of constant tension, living to the sound of hell's bells, fighting inside enemy waters, losing bonefish. They would not survive another submerged mine transit, so they would run. At 2100 hours on June 24th, Sea Dog surged ahead at flank speed. Behind her came Crevalle, then Tunney, then Skate, the four boats holding a tight column, bows pointed northeast. A second group, Flying Fish, Bowfin, Tenosa, and Spadefish, followed several miles astern. Hydeman stood on Sea Dog's bridge, binoculars raised, scanning the black horizon. The night was moonless, calm, perfect. Then, without warning, the SJ's surface search radar died. Just went dark. Executive Officer James Lynch came up from below. "Radar's out, sir." Hydeman nodded once. "I know. We're blind." He ordered Crevalle forward to take the lead using her radar. Below decks, technicians tore into the failed system, working by red light as the boats raced onward at full speed. At midnight on June 25th, the radar flickered back to life. Sea Dog resumed the lead. The strait narrowed, 17 miles across, shallow water, violent currents. This was the killing ground, the place where Wahoo had fought her last battle. Hydeman knew every patrol pattern, every listening post, every air search schedule. Japanese boats guarded both ends of the passage. Aircraft rotated overhead. Shore stations listened from Sakhalin. They were waiting. At 2:35, Sea Dog crossed the narrowest point of La Perouse at 21 knots. Nothing happened. No searchlights. No patrol craft. No explosions. Crevalle followed 200 yards behind. Then Tunney. Then Skate. The column pressed on, engines straining, wakes cutting white scars across black water. By 5 o'clock, all 8 submarines were clear. They were through. Hydeman ordered speed reduced to 10 knots, and the formation spread out. Engineers inspected engines overheated from 8 hours at flank speed. Crews finally exhaled. 3 hours later, Sea Dog submerged to check for damage. As the boat slid beneath the surface, Hydeman ran the numbers in his head. 9 submarines entered Tsushima Strait on June 4th. 8 exited La Perouse on June 25th. 1 lost, Bonefish. 85 men. But the mission had succeeded. 28 Japanese ships sunk. 54,786 tons destroyed. Plus 1 Soviet freighter accidentally torpedoed, another 11,000 tons. Japan's last protected shipping route was gone. Merchant captains refused to sail. Dockworkers stopped loading cargo. The Sea of Japan, once Hirohito's private lake, was now a hunting ground. On July 4, 1945, Sea Dog entered Pearl Harbor. Admiral Charles Lockwood stood on the dock waiting. When Hydeman stepped ashore, Lockwood shook his hand and said nothing for 10 long seconds. Then, quietly, "Mush would be proud." Hydeman nodded. "We finished what he started, sir." Lockwood looked past him at the submarines tied to the pier. 8 boats. Not 9. But they had done what no one else had dared. They had broken into Japan's forbidden waters. They had proven submarines could defeat minefields with experimental sonar. They had avenged Wahoo. And they had shown the Japanese, finally and irrevocably, that nowhere was safe anymore. Every surviving crewman received a piece of paper that looked almost absurd for what they had endured. Admiral Lockwood personally issued certificates enrolling them in the Distinguished Order of Mighty Mine Dodgers, his dry, understated way of honoring men who had slipped through the most lethal waters of the war and lived. The humor didn't erase the cost. USS Bonefish never returned. 85 men remained on the bottom of the Sea of Japan, their patrol ending without wreckage, without survivors, without answers. Operation Barney was a triumph, but it was also a ledger written in blood. Its origins stretched back 2 years, to a quiet office at Pearl Harbor on October 11, 1943, the day Wahoo failed to report. Admiral Charles Lockwood was reading routine damage assessments when the message arrived. Wahoo overdue. Presumed lost. All hands. He closed his office door and did not emerge for 4 hours. When he finally stepped out, those who knew him well said he looked a decade older. That afternoon, Lockwood gathered his intelligence officers and spoke just 6 words. Find me a way into Japan. The problem was brutally simple. The Sea of Japan was protected by geography and engineering. 3 entrances. All mined. Tsushima Strait in the south was guarded by 4 continuous lines of contact mines, suspended on steel cables. La Parau Strait in the north was seeded with random minefields across 17 miles of shallow, fast-moving water. Sagaru Strait, between Honshu and Hokkaido, was too shallow and too heavily patrolled to even consider. American submarines could not detect underwater mines. Sonar in 1943 was designed to find ships, large, moving targets, not stationary spheres suspended in darkness. A mine 300 feet ahead might as well not exist. By the time a periscope spotted a cable, there was no room to turn. So the Sea of Japan became untouchable. Japanese merchant shipping flowed freely between Korea and the home islands. Iron, ore, coal, food, ammunition, everything the war machine required, moved unescorted, lights burning, captains confident that American submarines could never reach them. Lockwood refused to accept that reality. In April 1944, he traveled to San Diego to meet researchers at the University of California's Division of War Research. He asked a single, pointed question: can you build something that detects mines? The lead scientist, Dr. William Tukey, explained they had been experimenting with a new concept for minesweepers, frequency-modulated sonar, or FM sonar. Instead of emitting a single tone, it swept through a range of frequencies. With a non-directional hydrophone, the bearing of an object could be determined by frequency shift alone. Under ideal conditions, it could detect objects out to 800 yards. But there were problems. FM sonar struggled to distinguish between mines and schools of fish. Fish returned muddy, inconsistent signals. Mines produced a sharp, clean tone, but teaching operators to hear the difference took weeks. The equipment itself was temperamental. Wiring failures, power spikes, phantom contacts. The minesweeper force tested it. They rejected it. Too complicated. Too unreliable. Too risky. Lockwood saw something else. Can you put it on a submarine? He asked. Tukey hesitated. Maybe, if we fix the reliability issues. How long? 6 months. Maybe 8. Lockwood didn't blink. He approved the project on the spot. Funding was allocated. Engineers were assigned. 5 submarines were pulled from active patrols in late 1944 and sent to San Diego for modification. Flying fish, skate, bonefish, crevalle, sea dog. The first tests were disasters. The wiring was wrong. The sonar shrieked and wailed, filling compartments with unholy noise. One operator described it as a chamber of horrors. Crews ripped the equipment out and started over from scratch. By January 1945, the problems were solved. The screen began showing bright green paired returns, clear, unmistakable mine signatures. When the sonar beam swept across a mine, it produced a sharp, bell-like tone that cut through the submarine. The crews gave it a name. Hell's Bells. Operators learned to hear the difference. Fish sounded wrong, soft, smeared, uneven. Mines rang clean and precise. What had once been invisible death now had a sound. And for the first time since Wahoo vanished, Lockwood had what he demanded in 1943. A way into Japan. Operation Barney was no longer an idea. It was inevitable. Every man who survived Operation Barney received a certificate signed by Admiral Charles Lockwood himself. It inducted them into a half-serious, half-grim fraternity he called the Distinguished Order of Mighty Mine Dodgers, his way of honoring crews who had slipped through the most lethal waters of the Pacific and lived. But no piece of paper could soften the truth. USS Bonefish never returned. 85 men vanished into the Sea of Japan, their patrol ending without wreckage, without survivors, without answers. The victory was real. The cost was permanent. The roots of Operation Barney reached back 2 years to a quiet, devastating afternoon on October 11, 1943. That was the day Wahoo failed to return. Admiral Lockwood was in his office at Pearl Harbor Submarine Base, reviewing routine damage reports, when the message arrived. Wahoo overdue. Presumed lost. All hands. He locked his office door and stayed inside for 4 hours. When he finally emerged, his staff noticed something unsettling. He looked older, as if time itself had struck him. That same day, Lockwood summoned his intelligence officers and spoke only 6 words. Find me a way into Japan. The problem was brutally clear. The Sea of Japan was protected by engineering, geography, and certainty. 3 entrances, all sealed. Tsushima Strait in the south held 4 continuous lines of contact mines, suspended on steel cables. La Parau Strait in the north was seeded with random minefields across 17 miles of shallow, turbulent water. Sagaru Strait between Honshu and Hokkaido was too shallow and too heavily patrolled to even attempt. American submarines had no way to detect underwater mines. Sonar in 1943 was designed to find ships, large, moving targets, not silent spheres waiting in the dark. A mine 300 feet ahead might as well not exist. By the time a periscope spotted a cable, there was no space left to maneuver. So the Sea of Japan remained forbidden. Japanese merchant shipping flowed freely between Korea and the home islands. Iron ore, coal, food, ammunition. Everything the Japanese war machine depended on moved unescorted, lights blazing, captains confident that American submarines could never reach them. Lockwood refused to accept that. In April 1944, he traveled to San Diego to meet researchers at the University of California's Division of War Research. He asked a single question: can you build something that detects mines? The lead scientist, Dr. William Tukey, explained they were experimenting with a new system originally intended for minesweepers, frequency-modulated sonar, or FM sonar. Instead of emitting a single tone, it swept across a range of frequencies. Using a non-directional hydrophone, operators could determine the bearing of an object based on frequency shift alone. Under ideal conditions, it could detect objects out to 800 yards. But the system was deeply flawed. It struggled to distinguish mines from schools of fish. Fish produced muddy, inconsistent returns. Mines produced a sharp, clean tone, but training operators to hear the difference took weeks. The equipment itself was temperamental. Wiring failures, power surges, phantom contacts. The minesweeper force tested it. They rejected it. Too complicated, too unreliable, too dangerous. Lockwood saw something else. Can you put it on a submarine? He asked. Tukey hesitated. Maybe, if we solve the reliability issues. How long? 6 months. Maybe 8. Lockwood approved the project immediately. Funding was authorized. Engineers were assigned. 5 submarines were pulled from combat patrols in late 1944 and sent to San Diego for modification. Flying fish, skate, bonefish, crevalle, sea dog. The first trials were disasters. The wiring was wrong. The sonar screamed, howled, and shrieked through the hull. One operator described it as a chamber of horrors. Crews ripped the system out and rebuilt it from scratch. By January 1945, the problems were solved. The screen began showing bright green paired returns, unmistakable mine signatures. When the sonar beams swept across a mine, it produced a sharp, bell-like tone that cut through the submarine. The crews gave it a name: Hell's Bells. Operators learned the sound. Fish were soft, smeared, uncertain. Mines rang clean and precise. What had once been invisible death now had a voice. And for the first time since Wahoo vanished, Lockwood had what he demanded in 1943. A way into Japan. Operation Barney was no longer theory. It was no longer revenge. It was execution. And when the last submarine returned, 8 boats instead of 9, the Sea of Japan was no longer a protected lake. It was a hunting ground. Bonefish and her crew never came home. But they helped prove something that would echo through naval history. No water is truly safe forever. The range was consistent, 800 yards, roughly a third of a mile. Enough warning to maneuver if everything worked exactly as designed. But the system was still temperamental. The FM sonar glitched without warning. Screens went blank. Sharp tones blurred into mush. Operators couldn't always trust what they were seeing or hearing. A formal evaluation in February 1945 reached a blunt conclusion. It is not felt that in its present state of development, FM sonar is operationally reliable. Admiral Lockwood read the report. Then he set it aside. He had waited 16 months since Wahoo disappeared. In that time, Japanese shipping inside the Sea of Japan moved nearly 6 million tons a year, untouched and unthreatened, fueling factories, armies, and fleets. Japan's war effort still flowed through waters American submarines could not reach. Lockwood had waited long enough. In January 1945, he ordered his staff to begin planning a full-scale penetration of the Sea of Japan. He selected Commander William Barney Seaglaff to lead the operations design, a veteran of 7 war patrols with 15 confirmed sinkings. Seaglaff understood submarines, risk, and how quickly courage turned to catastrophe when judgment failed. His plan was audacious. 9 submarines, all equipped with FM sonar, divided into 3 wolf packs. They would enter through Tsushima Strait on consecutive nights, hunt freely for 15 days, then escape north through La Parau Strait, the same passage where Wahoo had died. The mission would do 3 things: prove submarines could navigate minefields, avenge Wahoo, shatter Japanese confidence in their last protected waters. Lockwood named it Operation Barney, after Seaglaff's nickname. But one problem remained. No one knew exactly where the mines were. Intelligence confirmed 4 lines across Tsushima Strait, but not their precise positions. Spacing was unknown. Cable depths varied. The fields had been laid in 1942 and 1943, and no American submarine had ever survived close enough to map them. Seaglaff needed reconnaissance. In March 1945, he dispatched USS Tenosa on a mission unlike any other. Commander Richard Lahm received simple orders: approach Tsushima Strait, use FM sonar to detect the minefields, plot their positions, and get out alive. No attacks, no risks. This patrol was about information, not glory. For 11 days, Tenosa crept along the approaches at minimum speed. The FM sonar performed flawlessly. Mines appeared clearly at ranges up to 700 yards. Operators counted cables, tracked depths, sketched patterns. Every contact was logged. Every bell noted. When Tenosa returned to Pearl Harbor in early April, Seaglaff finally had what he needed. For mine lines stretched northwest to southeast across the strait. Mine spacing ranged from 50 to 150 yards. Cable depths varied from 20 to 80 feet below the surface. The field was lethal, but navigable. If the sonar worked, if the operators stayed alert, if navigation was perfect, if nothing went wrong. Seaglaff chose his boats with care. Heidemann was given overall command, steady, methodical, unshakable. He had led Sea Dog since March and already proven he could stay calm when equipment failed. Pierce commanded the Polecats, aggressive, intelligent, never reckless. Risser led the Bobcats, trusted completely by his crews. 3 Wolfpack commanders, 9 submarines, 270 men. Throughout April and May, the boats trained together at Pearl Harbor. Crews practiced FM sonar operations, rehearsed simulated mine transits, and memorized Tenosa's charts. They learned the sound of mines in their sleep. Lockwood himself went to sea during training. He stood beside sonar operators, listened to Hell's bells, watched the green pairs appear on the screen. He needed to know exactly what he was sending his men into. During one exercise, Sea Dog's sonar failed mid-transit. The screen blurred. The tones went muddy. Lockwood immediately halted the drill. Technicians traced the problem to a loose wire and fixed it in 30 minutes. But the lesson lingered. The equipment could fail at any moment. And if it failed inside a real minefield, the submarine would die. On May 20th, Lockwood summoned all 9 commanding officers to his office. He spoke of Wahoo, of Morton, of 79 men who never came home. Then he made something rare in wartime command unmistakably clear. "This mission is voluntary," he said. "Anyone who wants out may say so now. No questions, no consequences. This is the most dangerous operation we've ever attempted." No one spoke. 9 commanders, 9 boats, all in. On May 27th, 1945, the 9 submarines of Operation Barney slipped away from Pearl Harbor and set course for Guam. 2 days later, on May 29th, they arrived and immediately began final preparations. Torpedoes were loaded. FM sonar systems were tested again and again. Crews ran drills until exhaustion blurred into routine. For 3 days, every cable, every valve, every wire was checked as if lives depended on it, because they did. On June 2nd, Vice Admiral Charles Lockwood flew to Guam personally. He did not send orders. He did not delegate. He came to look each commander in the eye. One by one, he met with them aboard their boats, shook hands, and spoke quietly. No speeches, no bravado, just responsibility. When Lockwood reached Commander Earl Hydeman aboard Sea Dog, he said something he had never said before to a submarine skipper. If the FM sonar fails inside the minefields, Lockwood told him, you surface immediately. You radio for help. You abort the mission. I will not lose another submarine to heroics. Hydeman nodded. Understood, sir. Lockwood leaned closer. I mean it, Earl. Morton didn't abort when he should have. Don't repeat his mistake. Yes, sir. Both men understood the truth, neither said aloud. Once a submarine was deep inside a minefield threaded with hundreds of contact mines, surfacing would not save it. Radioing would not help. Failure meant death. The only real option was to keep moving forward, trust the equipment, trust the crew, and hope luck held just long enough. At 0215 on June 4th, Hydeman's faith would be tested. Within 48 hours of the first torpedoes striking Japanese shipping, the effects of Operation Barney rippled through Tokyo. On June 10th, Japanese Naval Command issued emergency orders. All merchant shipping in the Sea of Japan was to halt immediately. Every convoy was ordered back to port. All cargo vessels were to remain anchored until further notice. 643 ships were affected. More than 3 million tons of shipping capacity froze overnight. The Sea of Japan was Japan's industrial lifeline. Iron, ore from Korea. Coal from Manchuria. Food from occupied territories. Nearly 70% of Japan's raw materials moved through those waters. Now, 9 American submarines controlled it. Within a week, steel production dropped 18%. Ammunition output fell by 22%. Food deliveries to major cities slowed to less than half of normal levels. Not because of bombing, not because of blockade, but because fear had paralyzed the merchant fleet. The psychological collapse spread faster than the sinkings themselves. Sailors refused to sign on. Captains resigned rather than sail into those waters. Dock workers went on strike, demanding combat pay to load ships bound for the Sea of Japan. Insurance companies canceled coverage for cargo headed toward Korean ports. Japan's maritime system seized up. On June 22nd, Japanese command attempted one final restart. A heavily escorted convoy, 3 destroyers, 2 patrol boats, 6 merchant ships, departed Busan bound for Tsuruga. By midday on June 23rd, 2 merchant ships had been torpedoed. The convoy scattered. The survivors limped back to port. The attempt was abandoned. Japan never regained control of the Sea of Japan. On August 6th, the atomic bomb fell on Hiroshima. 3 days later, Nagasaki. On August 15th, Japan surrendered. Later analysis showed Operation Barney had already cut Japan's supply lines nearly 2 months before the atomic strikes. The submarines had not just sunk ships. They had shattered confidence. Lockwood understood exactly what his Hellcats had achieved. When the submarines returned to Pearl Harbor on July 4th, he personally welcomed them. Each surviving crewman received a certificate enrolling him in the Distinguished Order of Mighty Mine Dodgers, a grimly humorous acknowledgement of what they had survived. Later, in private, Lockwood gathered the 9 commanding officers. What he said never appeared in any official report. Mush Morton would have made it out if we'd had this technology, Lockwood said. Wahoo died because we didn't. You prove we do now. The Sea of Japan doesn't belong to Japan anymore. It belongs to us. But the victory came with a price that never left him. Bonefish never returned. Commander Lawrence Edge and 84 crewmen were lost in Toyama Bay on June 19th, sunk by Japanese depth charges during an attack on a small convoy. No survivors. Just like Wahoo. Lockwood visited the families himself. 85 homes. 85 conversations. 85 times explaining that their sons, husbands, and fathers had died inside Japan's most protected waters, proving that American submarines could go anywhere, and that nowhere was safe anymore. When Vice Admiral Lockwood met the families of the men who never came home, most of them asked the same question. Did it matter? Did what he did actually change anything? Lockwood never avoided the answer. He told them the truth, plainly and without comfort padding. Yes, he said, your son helped end the war. Because of what he did, Japan lost control of the Sea of Japan. Because of that, thousands of American lives were saved. For some families, that knowledge brought a measure of peace. For others, it never could. No explanation could replace a son, a husband, or a father. But Lockwood never lied about what Operation Barney achieved. The mission worked. The technology worked. The impossible barrier had been breached. Operation Barney proved that submarines equipped with FM sonar could penetrate minefields once thought impassable. It changed doctrine overnight. By September 1945, the Navy had already modified 20 additional submarines with FM sonar systems. Plans were underway for a second large-scale penetration of the Sea of Japan in October. It never happened. The atomic bombs ended the war before those boats sailed. In most history books, Operation Barney became little more than a footnote, overshadowed by strategic bombing and nuclear weapons. But among submariners, it was something else entirely. It was proof that technology could overcome geography, that innovation could defeat barriers once considered absolute, that 9 submarines with experimental equipment could accomplish what entire surface fleets could not. Today, every modern submarine carries mine detection systems descended directly from the FM sonar used in 1945. The Hell's Bells that rang through Sea Dog in June of that year became the foundation for modern underwater navigation and mine warfare. The boats themselves are gone. Sea Dog was decommissioned in 1948 and scrapped. Skate survived Operation Barney only to be sunk as a target during the Bikini Atoll atomic tests in 1946. Bowfin remains, preserved as a museum ship at Pearl Harbor. The rest were scrapped or lost to test programs. But the lesson endured. Commander Earl Hydeman retired from the Navy in 1957 as a Rear Admiral. He was awarded the Navy Cross for Operation Barney. The citation read, in part, with great daring and heroic actions, fully aware of the perils involved in completing this unprecedented undertaking, he penetrated strong anti-submarine barriers and entered supposedly inviolable enemy waters. Richard Lynch, executive officer of Skate, the man who heard a mine cable scrape from bow to stern, also retired as a Rear Admiral. Decades later, he still remembered the sound. In interviews, he said it lasted perhaps 10 seconds, but felt like 10 minutes. Every man aboard believed they were already dead. Vice Admiral Lockwood retired in 1947. He wrote 3 books on submarine warfare in the Pacific. In each one, he devoted pages to Operation Barney. And in each one, he returned again to Mush Morton. He never separated the two, the man who was lost and the mission that finally succeeded. Lockwood died in 1967. At his funeral, several Operation Barney veterans stood together. Hyman was there. Lynch was there. When reporters asked them about the mission, they said Lockwood had originally planned it as vengeance for Wahoo. But it became more than that. It became proof. FM sonar technology advanced rapidly after the war. By 1950, it was standard equipment. By 1960, mine detection systems could map entire minefields from miles away. Modern submarines now navigate underwater obstacles that would have killed every boat of World War II. But Operation Barney was the proof of concept. 9 submarines, experimental equipment, 20 hours submerged in minefields, 28 ships sunk, 1 submarine lost. The mission succeeded because crews trusted technology that was not fully reliable, and because commanders made decisions that violated doctrine when doctrine no longer applied. Today, visitors can walk through USS Bowfin at Pearl Harbor. They can stand where the FM sonar operator listened for Hell's Bells. They can see where Commander Alexander Thierry guided his crew through 17 hours of constant mine detections. A memorial plaque lists all 9 Hellcats: Sea Dog, Creel, Spadefish, Tunny, Skate, Bonefish, Flying Fish, Bowfin, Tenosa. 8 came home. 1 did not. 85 men remain in the Sea of Japan forever. Nearby, another memorial honors USS Wahoo and Commander Dudley Mush Morton. 79 names. 1 date: October 11th, 1943. 2 losses, separated by 20 months. 1 failure. 1 breakthrough. And between them, the moment submariners proved that no water on Earth was truly forbidden. This was the boat that began it all. And it was the story Commander Lockwood never allowed himself to forget. If this story stayed with you, if it mattered to you even for a moment, take a second now and let us know. Every single response helps keep these memories from fading into the background noise of history. When people engage with stories like this, they don't disappear. If you haven't already, consider subscribing and turning on notifications. Not for us, but for the stories themselves. We dig them out of forgotten reports and fading archives. Stories of submariners who risked everything inside minefields. Of crews who trusted experimental technology and each other when failure meant death. Real people, real courage. Leave a comment and tell us where you're watching from. The United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, somewhere else entirely. This audience stretches across the world, and every location matters. You're not just watching history, you're helping preserve it. If someone in your family served, say their name. If this story reminded you of someone, tell us. Even a single line keeps these men from slipping back into silence. Thank you for being here. And thank you for making sure Commander Hideman, the Hellcats, and the crew of Bonefish are not forgotten. Japan did not believe American submarines were inside its protected sea until 28 ships vanished in 15 days and 9 submarines proved that nowhere was beyond reach. Operation Barney, June 4th to June 24th, 1945. The mission that avenged Wahoo. The technology that reshaped submarine warfare. And the sound of hell's bells echoing through minefields, marking the moment the Sea of Japan was no longer safe. Some victories are measured in tonnage. Others are measured in what history remembers. And this one deserves to be remembered.